Welcome back, bosses, to Boss Economics World, the only show where we slice through the economic baloney, expose government mismanagement, and call out the clowns running the circus. I'm your host, the Boss Economist, here to break down the latest economic headlines with the wit of a stand-up comic and the precision of a laser-guided missile. Today, we're diving headfirst into the April 2025 U.S. jobs report, a shiny apple that's rotten to the core, thanks to trade policy chaos, government incompetence, and a Federal Reserve that's asleep at the wheel. Buckle up, bosses, because this one's gonna hurt. Oh, look, the headlines are buzzing. U.S. job growth robust in April 2025. Unemployment steady at 4.2%. The government cheerleaders are out in full force, slapping each other on the back, while President Trump is on social media screaming, "No inflation, the Fed should lower its rate." Sounds like a party, right? Wrong, bosses. This jobs report is a masterclass in lipstick on a pig economics. Sure, non-farm payrolls grew by 177,000 last month, but dig beneath the surface, and you'll see the cracks in the foundation of America's economy, cracks caused by trade policy insanity, government mismanagement, and a labor market that's teetering on the edge of a cliff. Let's start with the big picture. This so-called robust job growth is a mirage. The Bureau of Labor Statistics, BLS, quietly revised down the job gains for the prior 2 months, meaning the economy isn't as strong as the cheerleaders want you to believe. And that 177,000 number? It's barely keeping pace with population growth. According to the Economic Policy Institute, the U.S. needs to add at least 150,000 jobs per month just to absorb new entrants into the labor market, meaning this blockbuster report is essentially treading water. But hey, why let facts ruin a good PR spin, right? And then there's the unemployment rate, holding steady at 4.2%. Sounds great, until you realize this number is a complete farce. The unemployment rate only counts people actively looking for work, not the millions who've given up in despair. The labor force participation rate ticked up to 62.6% in April 2025, but let's put that in context, it's still below pre-pandemic levels, and a whopping 37.4% of working-age Americans are sitting on the sidelines. For prime-age workers, 25 to 54, participation hit a 7-month high, but that's cold comfort when you consider the long-term trend of declining participation, driven by skills mismatches, opioid addiction, and a benefit system that sometimes penalizes work. This isn't resilience, bosses, this is a labor market limping along on life support. Now, let's talk about the elephant in the room, President Trump's trade policies. Economists are sounding the alarm that these punishing tariffs, levies on everything from Chinese electronics to European cars, are about to deliver a body blow to the U.S. economy. And guess what, bosses? The April jobs report is already showing the early warning signs. Manufacturing shed jobs last month at the steepest rate since 2020, as factories reel from higher input costs and shrinking export markets. The Institute for Supply Management's manufacturing index plunged to its lowest level in 5 years in April 2025, signaling a contraction that's only going to get worse as tariffs bite harder. But wait, there's more. Transportation and warehousing jobs spiked in April, the biggest gain since December 2024. Why? Because businesses are panic importing goods to get ahead of the tariff tsunami. This isn't growth, bosses, this is a sugar high, a temporary blip that's going to crash hard when the tariffs fully kick in. According to a 2025 study by the National Bureau of Economic Research, Trump's previous trade wars, 2018 to 2020, cost the U.S. economy $195 billion in lost output and eliminated 245,000 jobs. Fast forward to 2025, and the new round of tariffs is projected to be even worse, with Moody's Analytics estimating a potential loss of 1.2 million jobs by the end of 2026 if the trade war escalates further. And who pays the price? You, the American consumer, as prices for everything from smartphones to sneakers skyrocket. But hey, at least President Trump is happy, right? He's out there on social media, crowing about the jobs report and bullying the Federal Reserve to cut interest rates. Newsflash, Mr. President, inflation isn't no inflation, it's decelerating, not disappearing. The Consumer Price Index, CPI, rose 3.1% year-over-year in March 2025, down from 3.5% in February, but still well above the Fed's 2% target. And with tariffs jacking up import prices, inflation is poised to heat up again, squeezing household budgets and forcing the Fed to keep rates higher for longer. So much for that rate cut fantasy, bosses. Now, let's turn our attention to the clowns running the show in Washington, specifically, the Elon Musk-led Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE. Oh, how noble it sounds, downsize the federal workforce, reduce government spending. But in reality, bosses, this is economic vandalism on a grand scale. The federal government cut jobs for the third straight month in April 2025, the longest streak since 2022, and the layoffs are just getting started. According to Challenger, Gray and Christmas, the government leads all U.S. industries in announced layoffs in 2025, with 282,000 jobs slashed so far, mostly thanks to DOGE's hatchet job. Economists estimate that up to 500,000 jobs could be at risk as the cuts ripple through contractors, universities, and other sectors dependent on federal funding. Let's break this down, bosses. Government spending isn't just some abstract line item, it's a critical driver of economic activity. The Congressional Budget Office estimates that every dollar of federal spending generates up to $1.50 in economic output through the multiplier effect. So, when DOGE slashes funding, it doesn't just cut jobs in the public sector, it kills jobs in the private sector, too. Take the example of research universities, which rely on federal grants for everything from medical research to infrastructure projects. A 2025 report by the American Association of Universities found that federal funding cuts have already forced 15% of research institutions to lay off staff, with another 25% planning layoffs by the end of the year. And don't forget the contractors, companies like Lockheed Martin and Boeing, which depend on government contracts for a huge chunk of their revenue. When the government tightens its belt, these firms bleed jobs, and the pain spreads like wildfire. But hey, at least Elon Musk is having fun, right? While he's busy tweeting memes and cozying up to the White House, the real-world consequences of his efficiency crusade are devastating. Just look at the latest data from the Economic Innovation Group, which found that regions with high dependence on federal jobs, think parts of Virginia, Maryland, and Washington, D.C., are already seeing unemployment rates spike by up to 2 percentage points above the national average. This isn't efficiency, bosses, this is economic sabotage, courtesy of a government that cares more about optics than outcomes. And then there's the Federal Reserve, which is supposed to be the grown-up in the room but is acting more like a deer in headlights. Fed officials are in no rush to cut rates, waiting for further clarity on the impact of Trump's trade policies. Really, guys? The economy is screaming warning signs, manufacturing in freefall, job openings at their lowest since September 2024, and private hiring at a 9-month low, and you're still twiddling your thumbs. According to the Fed's own Beige Book, released in April 2025, 8 out of 12 Fed districts reported slowing economic activity, with businesses citing heightened uncertainty around tariffs and financial market turmoil. But sure, take your time, Fed, Rome wasn't burned in a day, right? Here's the kicker, bosses, the Fed's inaction is making a bad situation worse. With inflation still above target and tariffs poised to drive prices higher, the Fed is stuck between a rock and a hard place. Cut rates too soon, and you risk overheating inflation. Wait too long, and you risk a full-blown recession. But by doing nothing, the Fed is effectively choosing the latter. A 2025 analysis by Goldman Sachs predicts that the combined impact of tariffs, government spending cuts, and tight monetary policy could shave 2.5% off U.S. GDP growth by mid-2026, pushing the economy into recession territory. And when that happens, don't expect the Fed to ride to the rescue, they'll be too busy writing white papers about unforeseen shocks. And let's not forget the private sector, where the layoffs are already piling up like bodies in a B-movie horror flick. United Parcel Service, UPS, announced plans to cut 20,000 jobs, citing weaker demand for online shopping as tariffs and inflation squeeze consumer budgets. Volvo Group and Cleveland Cliffs are also shedding positions, with Volvo citing supply chain disruptions and Cleveland Cliffs pointing to shrinking demand for steel as tariffs hammer the auto industry. According to a 2025 report by the Conference Board, 63% of U.S. CEOs plan to freeze or reduce hiring over the next 6 months, the highest level of pessimism since the depths of the COVID-19 crisis. This isn't a labor market cooling gradually, bosses, this is a labor market on the verge of collapse. So, let's sum it up, bosses. The April 2025 jobs report might look like a shiny apple on the surface, but it's rotten to the core, thanks to a toxic cocktail of trade policy chaos, government mismanagement, and Fed inaction. Tariffs are killing manufacturing and jacking up prices, DOGE is slashing jobs and gutting economic activity, and the Fed is sitting on its hands while the economy slides toward recession. And who's to blame? The clowns in Washington, who care more about scoring political points than saving the economy. But hey, don't take my word for it, just look at the data. The U.S. economy is already showing signs of a slowdown, with GDP growth projected to fall to 1.8% in 2025, down from 2.5% in 2024, according to the International Monetary Fund. Consumer confidence is tanking, with the University of Michigan's Consumer Sentiment Index hitting its lowest level since mid-2023. And financial markets are on edge, with the VIX Volatility Index spiking to its highest level in 18 months. This isn't resilience, bosses, this is a government-sponsored recession in the making. Alright, bosses, that's all for today's economic beatdown. If you're as fed up as I am with the clowns running the show, hit that like button, smash that subscribe button, and share this video with every boss out there who's tired of economic baloney. And remember, in a world of economic chaos, the Boss Economist is your only guide to the truth. Until next time, stay sharp, stay skeptical, and stay boss.